Welcome, everyone, to the City Council meeting of Tuesday.
Recording in progress.
Tuesday, September 27th. We have a quorum, and so we can begin to do our business. And I guess we need a roll call.
Councilmember Burns?
Here.
Councilmember Sufferton? Here. Councilmember Reed?
Here.
Councilmember Heracariz?
Here.
Councilmember Kelly? Here. Councilmember Harris?
Present.
Councilmember Nguyen? Councilmember Nuzma?
Here.
Acting
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Here. Okay. Thank you. And I will do my mayor announcements, and I have a proclamation to read. And this is to do with October is National Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Month. And whereas there are 1.3 million individuals living in 15,600 nursing homes and over 800,000 individuals living in 28,900 assisted living residential care facilities in the U.S., and whereas the Federal Nursing Home Reform Act of 1987 guarantees residents their individual rights in order to promote and maintain their dignity and autonomy, and whereas all residents should be aware of their rights so that they may be empowered to live with dignity and self-determination, whereas we wish to honor and celebrate these citizens, to recognize their rich individuality, and to reaffirm their right to vote and participate politically, including the right to have a say in their care, and whereas individuals and groups across the country will be celebrating Residents' Rights Month with the theme, Inspiring Unity Within Our Community, emphasizing the importance of fostering meaningful community within the facility and encouraging residents' connection to their local community. Now, therefore, I, Eleanor Revelle, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Evanston, Illinois, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as National Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Month in the City of Evanston and encourage all citizens to join me in these important observances. And I would like to ask, is Candace Mitchell here? Sorry. Would you like to, yeah, why don't you come up? I'll give you this. I should say she's our long-term care ombudsman.
I feel like an applause is in order, but no, yeah.
Look at me, I'm an amateur. I'll get good at this someday. I just want to say thank you to Mayor Biss and to the City Council and to the City of Evanston for affirming the rights of our long-term care residents to be free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. This means so much to me. I'm so happy to be here on behalf of our residents. And Evanston does treat its long-term care residents really well. I'm very proud to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Nuzma.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to say thank you to Candace. Candace has been on the job as long as I have, and anyone else who is serving their first term on council. May 10th was your first day with the city. So thank you for all the work you do. Candace has been a great partner with the work we're doing on Albany Care, so much appreciated, and please keep it up. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Reed.
Yes, I just also want to add my thank you to Candace and welcoming. I actually, this is, I think, my first time seeing you. I know that Audrey Thompson used to hold the position that you were in, and so I'm glad to now put a face to the new Ombudsman. So thank you for your work, and it's critically important. Many of us have had parents or grandparents, in my case, grandparents who were in long-term health care facilities, and ensuring that, an extremely vulnerable population is taken care of is extremely critical. And so really thankful for the work that you've done. And I know, I haven't, this is my first time meeting you. I know that, given Audrey's work in the role, I'm sure you're fully living up to it and doing truly amazing and transformative work out there. So thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Great, okay. And now, do we have city manager announcements?
No announcements tonight. Thank
Okay.
you.
And this city clerk, communications?
We had the petition submitted today with the 50 signatures against the rental, the vacation rental. And Prudence Malin emailed to support the fair housing ordinance. And Elliot Sanction also emailed to support the fair housing ordinance. And Nancy Serenan also emailed to support fair housing. And most of you received communication from Sarah Flax with several oppositions to the billboard ordinance, but I understand that's not on the up for vote. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And then now we're ready for public comment. And I start with the people who are in person. Do you have that? Yeah, Tracy Weber. Tracy. Okay. Tracy Weber, and everyone will have 3 minutes for public comment. Is Tracy Weber here? Nope. Did she leave? Oh, she's coming.
No, that's not Tracy.
Oh, he's coming, sorry.
Or is it Tracy? No, I don't think. I think Tracy, if that's one of your neighbors, I think Tracy took off after committee.
Mike Vasilko?
Thank you. I'm here tonight to support Agenda Item 8.8, which is as amended for the West Janey report regarding Robert Crown's active concrete cracks in the amount of $12,800. That's their proposal for Phase 1. According to city staff, there is $400,000 yet to be paid to the Robert Crown Center contractor, meaning the city has leverage to get the contractor to repair flaws in the new construction at their expense. One of the issues at Robert Crown is the active concrete cracks developing on the first floor. The spider web of cracks occurs throughout the 4,000 square foot lobby where there are no control joints. Cracks vary in width and depth, many encircling chunks of concrete that may ultimately pop out. Staff describes the slab as a two-way reinforced structural concrete slab bearing on caissons. That suggests the slab is suspended. So it's not a slab on grade, as some have said, but it is a suspended slab not bearing on the soil if it, in fact, is spanning between caissons. So a 1/4-inch wide crack, with which there are many, are not normal for suspended structural concrete slabs. And it is dangerous to minimize the concern by comparing Crown's structural concrete floor to a retail food store slab on grade. They're just not equals. You can see the photographs that were circulated for Robert Crown's slab, and they are significant. So forgive me for being candid, but it's an amateur comparison to suggest a floor in a retail store slab on grade, which is mildly reinforced, is anything close to a structural concrete floor that's supposed to span between caissons. So it's not normal to have those cracks in a structural slab. There was a document circulated, and I don't mean to dwell on this, but it's called Research into Engineering Specs. It is not research at all. It's just a Google search for some phrases to use in opposition to this amended proposal. The sentences from that Google search are not engineering specs. Engineering specs are prepared by licensed engineers for contractors to build from. Contractors not build from Google searches. to suggest the document confirms staff's opinion that a quarter-inch wide crack and a structural slab is okay is just a silly statement. So with all due respect to everyone, staff, anybody sitting behind the dais, there's no qualifications to make those kinds of judgments, and I'm asking this council to approve the reduced only Phase 1 cost of $12,800 for the Wisjani report. Remember, we are discussing.
3 minutes is over.
Remember, we are discussing a matter of structural integrity. This is not a slab upgrade.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was that the end of my time?
Yes. That's the end of 3 minutes, yes. So who else is in here? Julianne Friend?
Good evening. Again, sorry some of you are going to hear me say the same thing over again. But thank you for this opportunity to address the council. My name is Julie Ann Friend, and I live at 2534 Lawndale Avenue with my spouse, Ed Walsh, who could not be here tonight. I am here to oppose the vacation rental license request from 2545 Lawndale, which is just a few houses away from me. I want to first stress that we are not opposed to having longer-term rental properties in the neighborhood. We are well aware of the lack of rental homes in Evanston neighborhoods for individuals and families who are not in a position to purchase a home, and encourage the city's efforts to improve those opportunities. However, in this case, the homeowners who live in California have disclosed in a letter to the residents that they purchased the property in order to have ready housing when visiting their aging parents who reside in the Mather downtown, but that they hope to rent the unit out between visits to offset the cost of taxes and upkeep. While I empathize with the homeowner's circumstances, my parents too live in another state. The benefit and convenience to the individual homeowner will be a detriment to the many homeowners on the block, especially the nearby neighbors, in the form of increased traffic, subsequent safety concerns for the many small children who live in the community, who play in the fronts, the houses, and in the alley on which this house is located. And the potential for disruptive noise and activity associated with Northwestern athletic events, given the likelihood that the prospective renters would choose this particular property for its proximity to the 201 and or Ryan Field. In today's hearing, we learned that homeowners intend to visit more often once they have more travel flexibility in June. But as I understand it, they do not intend to make the property their permanent residence in the future. But I invite corrections, of course. I remain concerned that the homeowner's intent is to obtain a full-time future income generating activity for its absentee owners, packaged in a contemporary explanation of family concern and convenience. I do urge you to vote no. I understand that our concerns are speculative and that there is no evidence of wrongdoing or misdeeds to date, but the property has yet to be rented, so such opportunity for evidence either way is unavailable. But the city invited us to participate in the process with our concerns, and so we have done so. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Brown?
Good evening again to some of you, and good evening to those I haven't spoken before as I stand here now. I, too, am an Evanston resident of 47 years. I live on 3108 Central Street, which is around the corner from the property in question. I've lived there 18 years since the building was prepared as our fourth residence in Evanston. The situation is that we request that the consideration of this license be denied at this point pursuant to the statute under which the license would be provided. Specifically, in Section D of that ordinance, the city council may deny a vacation rental license upon a finding that such denial is in the public interest. And I would assume that the public interest takes into account the people who live in the immediate area of the rental. In fact, this ordinance, as I'm sure all of you are aware, provides that notice must be given to property owners in the neighborhood within so many feet. In this case, it says 250 feet. I've heard 500 feet. I've heard different things, but the neighbors are given notice for some reason. And I would suggest that the reason is so they can weigh in. And in this instance, in order to allow the neighbors to weigh in, we sent a petition around. And although there's some confusion about where the petition has been and who saw it and who didn't see it, it's fairly clear to me that this body did not have an opportunity before, and maybe haven't had it since, a couple hours ago, to even know that there was a petition. But I'd like to read the simple paragraph that was signed to by approximately 50 of the neighbors. And it reads, "We, who reside in the local area of the above referenced property," that's the 2545 Lawndale property, "hereby submit that we are in opposition to the issuance by the city of Evanston of a vacation rental license for the property at 2545 Lawndale. We believe that a license for short-term rentals would have a potential for a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, safety, and property values of our properties, and would not be consistent with the character of the neighborhood." That particular petition was signed, again, by all of the neighbors, some of whom are renters. They're not the people that pay the real estate taxes on the property, but they are people who reside and can comment upon these issues, the use, enjoyment.
The time is
safety.
almost up.
Okay. Consequently, I would request that you seriously, those of you who voted before, reconsider your votes in light of what the public sentiment is that has been requested pursuant to the ordinance. And I would submit that if you vote in accordance with the situation, as I believe we've made it clear,
Thank you.
public interest decision would be to deny this request. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
your time.
thank you. Jennifer Clark?
Thank you, council members. And again, I know some of you heard from me earlier. My name is Jennifer Clark. I am a resident at 2533 Lawndale Avenue, also representing my husband, Matt Clark, who is also unable to attend this evening. I am a mother of two smaller children who attend Willard and Haven, who are 9 and 11. My primary concern as a mother in the neighborhood is of the nature of the use of this property as a short-term vacation rental. I do want to be clear, I have no concerns with longer-term rentals in the area. I do actually feel like there's a shortage in Evanston, and I myself was also a renter for 2 years prior to buying our home for 9 years. Our home was actually a rental for 50 years to many families in the area who are very welcomed by the neighbors of the area. So again, my concern is more of the short-term rental nature, and for the safety of the families and community that live in our neighborhood. There are many smaller children than even mine, and just concern over the transient nature of people who will be in and out of the property who may not be aware or share the same concern of people in our community and of the children on the block. I also just want to comment too, is I'm hoping that you will hear the concerns of myself as well as the many people who signed the petition, since we were given notice to be able to come and comment in public. I thank you for your consideration and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Michelle Villa?
Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Villa. I am the daughter of Lisa Berlsheimer and Steve Galliano, who are owners of that property on 2545 Lawndale. And I'm here to support their vacation rental home. I am a new resident of Evanston, happy to be here. And I live about 2 miles from the property, and I am the person that takes care of it when it is vacant. I am a new employee of District 65. I work at Park School, which is a special education school. I apologize for being so casually dressed. I just came from a crisis prevention training for Park School. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention that I currently check on the house 1 or 2 times a week, making sure that everything's good. And if there were any issues, that I am in town and I can be contacted for that rental. And yeah, I would go over between rentals and making sure that everything is safe and settled. And yeah, I hope that you consider them for supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say I intentionally dress casual, just like church, so folks know that however you come and participate.
Okay. Ronald O'Neill?
Good evening, council members. My name is Ronald O'Neill. I'm general counsel for IHC Construction Companies. We are a construction company from Elgin, Illinois, 385 Airport Road in Elgin. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. I'm speaking to you this evening about the 1909 raw water intake project. My company was awarded that contract to construct the new water intake. We were the lowest qualified bidder. When I say we were the lowest, I mean we were the lowest by $2.5 million. The second lowest bidder chose to protest the award of that contract to us, which you all did on the recommendation of your staff. Recently, we went to court over that matter, and the second lowest bidder was granted a preliminary injunction. I won't get into the details of why that was. It was the judge was persuaded to grant that injunction, and I will leave it to your very capable interim corporation counsel to explain to you the ins and outs of that ruling. What I'm here for today is because what you're probably going to hear from your corporation counsel is an explanation of the options that this community now has going forward as to what it can do. I'm here to advocate for one of those options. What IHC would like to see and what we believe is in the best interest of the community and the taxpayers in it would be that this project is rebid at this point. By rebidding, the city and would be able to fix some of the issues that the court found with the way the bid specifications were worded. There were no problems with the bid specifications. The way that it was worded in the package caused some problems down the line in terms of us being able to, in the judge's estimation, meet those qualifications. We met them, and we are capable of doing this project and doing it on time and on budget. However, the judge felt otherwise, and we think the way to remedy this is to have the whole project rebid. We are committed to doing this project. We want to do this. We want to build this raw water intake for the city of Evanston. By the way, I see some, puzzled looks. This ruling just came 2 days ago, so you haven't had a chance to really get briefed on this yet. You will be, though.
Time is almost up.
Okay. Just want to point out, one of the reasons that we are the most qualified is because we were $2.5 million less expensive than the next bidder. And two, we met the MBE and WBE numbers that are required by the IEPA. The the body that it will be granting a loan to complete this project. The next qualified bidder, the next bidder up, did not meet these numbers by a long shot.
So you do need to wrap up, please.
Okay. That's it. That's what I want you to know, is that we feel that that's something that's important to this community. And the numbers that were set were 12% for women-owned businesses and 5% for minority businesses. IHC met that to the tune of millions for those businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Logan?
My name is Ellen Logan. I'm a lifetime Evanstonian. I'm here to talk about the VRBO license. Clearly, Airbnbs and the VRBOs are here to stay, and we're going to be hearing more and more about them. I urge the council, though, to deny this request and all other requests until they establish acceptable requirements for such licenses, keeping in mind always the public interest. That's why we're here tonight. I urge you to be proactive on this issue rather than reactive, and deny this request and all others until you have a handle on the increasing number of requests you're going to have for short-time rentals. Regarding this particular home on Lawndale, the owners can continue to rent this house long-term if that's their option, while the city council checks with other cities and gets a handle on how these requests are being handled. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Berolsheimer. Oops, but she's by Zoom. I mean, I know we have Ken Prosky here in the room, so Ken, why don't you come? We like to do people who are in person first. No, Ken. Oh, so Carl, did you sign? No, it was Lisa was next on my list, but she's by Zoom. Okay. We'll hear from Ken, and then we'll hear from Carl. Okay.
I'm going to change the subject.
All right.
For those of you who have not met me, first of all, good evening to all council members. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ken Prosky, and I'm here to comment on SP2, the parking study report. I live at 1323 Chancellor Street, which is immediately adjacent to Ryan Field and Lot 102 in the consultant's report. Thank you for commissioning this informative and generally very helpful study. I was impressed. However, I am concerned that some conclusions and recommendations in the northwestern section are based on observations during a single football and basketball game, which seems to me like far too small of a sample size to accurately capture and understand the actual range of unique conditions and their broad impact on the community. While I am not a parking expert, I don't profess to be a consultant in this, my comments that I'm going to make are based on my observations from living here 24/7 for over 200 football games and 500 basketball games during the last 36 years. So I just have a few general remarks to make. First, I agree with the statement that there is nothing that prevents game day parking on residential streets. Very true. However, I strongly disagree with the conclusion that Evanston does not have a game day parking problem. We do. Event parking routinely overflows and saturates residential areas, and it prevents many residents from parking near their homes, even on small events. Second, and more importantly, I disagree that this problem could be solved by simply adding a few blocks to District 6, which restricts non-permit parking from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Yes, District 6 should be expanded, particularly east of the athletic campus, but expansion alone will not provide meaningful relief because most events occur outside these times. District 6 needs to prohibit and enforce non-permit parking during any large event, not just from 9 to 6. And finally, the report does not even mention that during events it is impossible for oncoming cars to pass each other on many of Evanston's narrow parked-up streets. The report does say that they saw this in Wilmette, but it doesn't even mention it for Evanston. It can take 5 to 10 minutes to travel a few blocks because everyone needs to repeatedly back up to the nearest intersection and take turns to pass. It happened to me Saturday night. It took me 10 minutes to get 2 blocks. This happens multiple times on Asbury during every event, even a low-attendance game like Saturday.
Your time is almost up.
Okay. In conclusion, I urge you, the city, to actively solicit resident input before designing and implementing any solutions. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Thank you. And so, Carl, did you want to speak?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did speak with the committee in session before. I'm Carl Berlsheimer. I'm the father of Lisa Berlsheimer, the applicant for the vacation rental license. I live in Evanston. My family moved here in 1962, and we have owned 2 houses, a condominium, and now an apartment at the Mather. We've been here 60 years. We are deeply invested in Evanston. We love Evanston. We chose to live in Evanston and raise our family here, and I served on many boards, including the Evanston Community Foundation, of which I was also chair. My wife, Diane, has also served on many boards, such as the YWCA, and she's been president of every PTA that our children attended. That was 3 of them, grammar school, junior high school, and the high school. Lisa is our 4th child. She was born in Evanston and attended public schools here. She and her husband, Steve, as you know, own the condominium on Sherman that our granddaughter, Michelle, is now living in, and you've met her. And then they own the townhouse at 2545 Lawndale. They love Evanston. They intend to make Evanston their future home. Lisa and Steve desire to be able to rent the townhouse using Airbnb to help defray the cost of owning it. And I didn't mention this before, but we are aware that our people do rent their homes in Evanston without complying with the law and getting a license. But they don't want to do it. They want to do it the right way by subscribing to Airbnb because of the standards that they have and that Airbnb has, and to comply with the council. Lisa and Steve are very proud of the Lawndale property. They have made many improvements in it, including a very nice fence that they put up, which they have a very nice side yard that's very nicely landscaped with nice trees. They have a table out there. They have a barbecue. And they will be very careful renting it. They want to list it on Airbnb, as I said, because of its standards. I think they will be wonderful neighbors. We are all very much invested in Evanston. And just finally, I would say that there is an ordinance that permits the licensing, and there's been nothing said here that would violate that. They intend to comply with the license in every way. And the petition and the objectioners are simply raising clouds and suspicions and things that might happen, but nothing that actually has happened or they intend to let happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, and Lisa Berlsheimer also, do you want to say something again?
Yes, hi, I
Hi.
will.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Lisa Berlsheimer, and this is my husband, Steve Galliano, and we're here to talk about the support for our home as a vacation rental. I grew up in Evanston. As my dad said, my son spent the pandemic in Evanston and obtained his master's degree from Northwestern. And my daughter just moved here in July and is working in District 65. I grew up in South Evanston. I went to Oakton and Chute and ETHS. And you met my father. We're devoted to Evanston. We purchased a condo in 2018 to be able to spend more time here with my folks. And my husband enjoys it here so much that he was eager for us to buy a second property. We do currently live in Southern California. I'm planning on retiring. I'm a speech and language pathologist in the public schools here in California, and I'm retiring in June of 2023. And so the property on Lawndale was purchased to be our next home. Will be our primary residence. We'll still travel back to California to see our grandchildren, but we do plan on spending our time in Evanston. We're asking for permission to approve the vacation rental application. We've been diligent in following all of the steps and procedures that the city is required for us to obtain this license. The home has been inspected and approved by the city. To answer some of the concerns, we are using Airbnb and VRBO because of their strict regulations and policies. We have our account set up so that we would personally be approving those who request to stay at our home. We're limiting the registered guest number to 6 and the number of cars to 2 so that they'd be able to use our garage and our driveway for parking and not take up space on the street. We have also set up the stays so that they would not be back to back. There's a gap of time between. And we are actually hoping to market, people have mentioned football games, but we're hoping to market more towards families. We have the house set up with some twin beds and a queen bed in rooms where families could come for college visits and even like orientation weekends. So that's kind of the market we'd like to have come to our home. We don't want football parties there. Like I said, we come every several months, we spend time there, and it's our home, and we've done a lot of improvements to make it our home. We have established a relationship with our direct neighbors where they do have our contact number and they have my daughter's contact number. And we have many friends and family in Evanston who are there to help if there's a broken pipe or if there were anything that needed to be taken care of. I do have connections that would take care of those for me.
If you could wrap up, please. We're almost.
All right. I just want to say we have, we have grandchildren too. I understand the concerns, but I want you to understand as well that this is our home. We do spend the summers there. For the last 3 years, we've spent summers in Evanston, the months of June and July. And so we
thank you.
Just want you to know. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Darlene Cannon? Can you tell if she's there? We'll come back in case she shows up. Bruce Ennenbach? Can you see Bruce there?
He's just having trouble unmuting.
Yeah, we'll come back to Bruce as well. Tina Payden?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. H1, just housing amendment. How many people that are making these housing laws own rental properties and rent to affordable units? Just cause evictions. Where are the landlord's protection? Where were you when the tenants are shooting bullets through my building? Where were you when the tenants are threatening me? Where were you when the tenants are destroying my building? You are not helping the affordable housing situation. You are forcing new rules down our throats without meaningful conversations with the providers. Luxury housing buildings such as E2, the Link Reserve, and the Albion, they don't have to worry about these rules because their rents are so high, they don't have to rent to low income. While you are imposing housing laws without us, you are making your own housing, affordable housing options smaller. How about some laws protecting the landlord? I'm still waiting for the mayor to call me back 10 months later to give me the money I was promised by him for a shooting at my building. All I'm left with is a $50,000 damages bill left by the tenant who you want to protect. Do you have an ordinance for that? Maybe the city manager can chime in and advise the mayor to keep his promises. Most nursing homes should be shut down. They are like roach motels. People check in, but they don't check out. Where is the inspection department here? People come in for help, but they are drugged, abused, and left in the corner to die. If you are claiming this month is for those people, visit the nursing homes and see that they smell, have short staff, overworked, and undertrained. And the owners of these facilities only care about money, not the patients. How often does the city inspection department drop by these nursing homes like you ride by my property giving me a ticket for a bush that's over the sidewalks? Again, Black people, pack your bags. The new Fifth Ward school is not for you. The new remodeled Family Focus in Fleetwood, not for you. The new townhomes on Wesley, Jackson, Foster, and Green Bay is not for you. Please go to the meeting tomorrow night for the land use, and you will see the 19 new townhomes proposed for $545,000. That's not for you. Black people won't be here by the time these programs and homes are built.
Your time is almost up, Tina.
Black Lives Matter, stay woke.
Thank you. Betty Sue Esther?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight I want to speak to H1, which is about the fair housing law that you plan on amending, and it should have been amended a long time ago to catch up with the federal laws. But in amending this fair housing law, you have still not protected the people that you are saying that should be covered under the fair housing laws, because you have not provided space for them to live that they can afford. You have a building that's property that was spent $1 million at Evanston and Jackson. And thanks to our Alderman Burns, he brought up the subject that maybe some of it should go into the land trust. That's unacceptable. If the city is purchasing that property, it should be totally given to the community partners for affordable housing, to watch over the fair housing laws, and to create the units that would be built for the low to moderate income. That is income from 30% to 120% of the AMI. I said 120% because we do know you have to have funds to manage these homes. So that property at Emerson and Jackson must be put into the land trust, and any property that the city purchased should go into the land trust so that they will be affordable for in perpetuity, and you do not have to keep begging and giving away benefits to the developers that they do not give anything back to the city. So I urge you to pass this amendment, and I also urge you to put that project into the community partners for affordable houses and have meetings with the people in the community so they can tell you what they want.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. Sue Lowellbach is next.
Hi, I'm Sue Lowellbach. I am with Connections for the Homeless and Joining Forces for Affordable Housing. I wanted to say that Joining Forces strongly supports passage of the Just Housing Initiative. I do agree with Ms. Esther that it doesn't solve all the problems and doesn't address affordability. However, along with credit scores and eviction records, justice involvement is excluding vast numbers of people from housing. These three issues are making even people who can afford to rent homeless, and are some of the biggest barriers that Connections clients face. The Just Housing Initiative is a small step forward, and we hope you will approve this ordinance and open the door for more reform. Additionally, I won't repeat my statement from P&D, but regarding P2, we urge you to approve the extension of the permitting process, in particular for the 1900 Sherman building. I'm hoping that we don't create any more obstacles for our developers, particularly those who are creating more affordable units. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Schechter.
Hi, thank you very much. Hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm speaking both as myself and as Community Alliance for Better Government. I urge you to vote yes on the amendments to Evanston's Fair Housing Ordinance that's before you. With the passage of these amendments, Evanston's ordinance will, along with Cook County, have the most inclusive number of protected classes in Illinois. This set of edits also provides a comprehensive correction to the patchwork of amendments over the years with a standard format with regard to definitions and policies. As a fair housing enforcement expert of 30 years, I can state unequivocally that the role of government is to guarantee equal opportunity to all people in their search for the housing of their choice within your borders. Housing people would otherwise qualify for based on objective standards like their income. I also want to say that essential to that role, to your role, is not only having the right laws in place, but the ability to enforce those laws. Evanston, I don't know how many of you are aware that Evanston used to be quote unquote substantially equivalent to HUD. I remember that when the Human Relations Commission under Owen Thomas conducted investigations, worked closely with the Corporation Council, and initiated lawsuits. That meant that HUD actually gave complaints to Evanston to investigate, but unfortunately Evanston lost that substantial equivalency in 1996. And I quote from HUD, it's on their website, they said because Evanston did not provide substantive rights and remedies for alleged discriminatory housing practices. So I feel that with these new amendments, you're on the road to being back into the enforcement business. So I would also urge, in addition to what you're passing before you, to empower your Corporation Council to enforce Evanston's Fair Housing Ordinance, just like the Corporation Council enforces long-term care facilities, and not leave it up to complainants to take private action. And I would end with this, that Evanston can and should take affirmative steps to enforce its ordinance, ensure that violators are brought to justice, and that residents and prospective residents of all backgrounds get the respect and protection they are due. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. So Tracy Webb is anywhere around? Or Darlene Cannon? Or Bruce Ennenbach?
Bruce Ennenbach is here. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Go ahead, please.
Apologize for the previous audio issues. My name is Bruce Ennenbach, a 45-year resident of First Ward. Respecting P2. P2 recommends the extension of time to obtain a building permit for 3 projects, 1012 Chicago Avenue, 1900 Sherman Avenue, and 605 Davis. Obviously, these 3 projects should not be in a combined vote, but rather be considered separate. Although I firmly support affordable housing options in our city, the 1900 Sherman Avenue project is primarily not one. I fervently oppose the extension of 1900 Sherman, as the county has no business building market rate apartments, which comprises the bulk of this project, which only masquerades as an affordable rent project, the project being no more affordable than the E2, for example. The city council should not be enabling the county to do what is clearly not the mission of the county. nor waste our tax dollars on such foolish and inappropriate ventures. There is not one developer in Chicagoland or anywhere who would venture into this money-losing scheme, and we should not be interested in taking the inevitable financial loss for our taxes, that being as a result of Cook County's participation. Please deny the extension for the 1900 Sherman Avenue project, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe that concludes public comment. So thank you, everyone. So now we're ready we have 3 special orders of business this evening. And the first one is a presentation from Trilogy about the new crisis emergency response program. So do we have Ms. Chris Mayer in the Zoom?
Hi, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Online.
Yes. Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Bell. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Chris Mayer, and I'm the Clinical Director of Crisis Services with Trilogy Behavioral Health, here to give an update on the continued implementation of our crisis program. So for anyone who doesn't know, we're one of a network of mobile crisis response providers that is assigned to Evanston and some nearby communities to provide immediate mobile response mental health services to people in need of that support. So we're part of a network that was built under the Sesa legislation so that everyone in Illinois will have access to this type of program once fully implemented. So different agencies are in different stages. We've been operating since January, and part of our update is that we're now operating 24/7. So we do offer mobile response any time of day, any day of the year, as well as that we are nearly fully staffed. So we also meet monthly with the Alternative Crisis Response Subcommittee, and that engagement has focused on how to get the word out to the community about the program, as well as about 988, which is closely connected to this program. So the relationship there is that 988 is the new national mental health crisis line. And in Illinois, 988 is one of the routes that people can take to get connected to mobile crisis programs. So what we've been working on with the subcommittee has taken the form of identifying community events for us to have a presence at, as well as creating a website and video to help get the word out about 988, Trilogy's program, as well as when to call what number, when to call 911, that kind of thing. So speaking to partnership with Evanston Police, which is a part of these programs, our partnership, I believe, is strong, and just want to extend a thank you to EPD. I believe they have the highest engagement of any police agency that I've heard of through this program. So they've been very transparent and very willing to collaborate. We attend regular roll calls, as well as receive almost daily referrals from them for 911 calls that they receive for us to respond to either with them or alone, as well as have extended us radio capability for our phones. So we're still getting that set up, but that will give our staff a quicker way to radio for help if there's a safety concern, as well as allow us to monitor calls to suggest us going out for a response if a mental health call comes in. So I know at last meeting we were brought up in conjunction with the proposal for outreach workers through Street Plus. So just wanted to speak to that and what intersection exists there for a moment, because I know it was kind of thrown out that there might be overlap with us. So while there is some overlap in terms of areas that we work on and individuals that we might serve, I do believe the scope and aims of these programs are different. So I don't see Street Plus as duplication of services with Trilogy. I do have concerns about what, the true aims are of any organization that combines waste management with human services. But insofar as the question of whether or not they would duplicate our services, I don't believe they would, because we're working towards different goals from a different frame. So finally, just a quick word on the Sesa advisory process. So Sesa, as I mentioned, is the state level legislation that created the network of crisis programs. And there's an ongoing statewide and regional advisory process to plan the next level of implementation. So both Trilogy and Evanston City staff will sit on the regional committees, which will define how that looks as we look to the years ahead. So that's kind of the update I have for you. Thank you.
Yeah, so stay on a little bit. Chris, I'm going to call on Cicely Fleming to talk a little bit about our alternative crisis response committee work, and then I'll open it up to council members if they have questions. So welcome, Cicely.
Good evening. Mayor Pro Tem, the city manager's not here, and city council members, I'm Cicely Fleming. I am still chairing the Alternative to 911 Response Committee with Alderman Ravel. We have been at this for a year and a half. I won't bore you with the details, but we have been working with Chris and his team ever since the state gave the contract to Trilogy for the mental health response team here in Evanston. As he said, we meet monthly. We are now to the community engagement section, and so there is a video that Chris and his team have produced with our communication staff just to further clarify what their service provision is and how you reach them. As he mentioned, there is 988. It is a statewide system, so we don't control that, and it can be a little bit clunky. But there are new flyers in English and Spanish that we've produced that actually have the direct number for Trilogy. So you can call Trilogy directly if you need service or someone else needs service. You can also call 911 and request it. It is their purview whether they send out their officers or Trilogy, because that's their jurisdiction. So we've worked closely with them. We understand that, there are more services that are needed. I know it's come up several times with you all about services, particularly for the homeless. That is not their specialty. Obviously, they work with anyone who needs care, but they are not a homeless response team. And they do service Evanston as well as other municipalities under the state contract. So we do have to share their service. I think Chris has a team of, how many, Chris, on your team?
22 we're up to now.
22, but they cover a variety of municipalities, so we can't just have them here only serving our downtown and other areas that are in need. That would be something that I would encourage you all to look to either another service provider for or, supplement what's happening. I do think because this is a state-sponsored service, we want to be careful that we don't try to direct their work. They are paid for by the state of Illinois, and so they have a specific scope of work. They also report to the state as well as us, and so we want to make sure that we're not asking them to do more work outside of their purview, particularly to show up and only respond to calls in a certain area. I do also want to address, there was an email that I think Alderman Marvell shared, that a gentleman shared regarding the response that Chris and his team made to a lady in need, and his concern was that she was able to say that she did not want service, therefore Chris and his team moved on. They are not, there are laws obviously to protect all of us and our rights on the street, and so if Chris does encounter someone, they cannot just force themselves upon people. People have the right, no matter what their mental state is, to decline service. And so a person was upset about that, but that is something, another issue that should be taken up with our our state legislators if we don't like that plan. Just like when police show up, they can do some service, but they cannot just whisk you away because they decide to. So I think we just want to keep the communication open with Chris and his team. There were maybe 10 of us on the committee, or 12 at one point. It's dwindled down a little bit since we've been gone for so long, but we want to continue to support Chris and his team, make sure people in the community know what they do and what they don't do. They have worked really hard with our other social service agencies and have a great relationship, so people call them all the time. We want to make sure you all have flyers and information you need so you can refer people to them. But my whole goal is to make sure we are clear on what Trilogy does and what they don't do so that we don't misuse the state funding and we don't risk the Evanston citizens not having the service because we have misused state funding.
Okay, thanks, Cicely.
Yep.
And
are you going to show the video, or are we just going to give the link?
I don't. Do you have the video able to share, Chris?
Or we can just share the link with you all.
Right. Yeah, I was going to mention that. So we have a new webpage on the city website, cityofelvanston.org/mental health, and it has, in addition to just a lot of resources of organizations that help with mental health issues, it describes the 988 program. It describes the Trilogy program. It's got the video there that you can link to. So it's And we're distributing the flyers in English and Spanish to all of our community centers and the library, city clerk's office. So we're working on getting the word out. So let's just pause a minute. Do any council members have any questions for the Councilmember Burns?
No questions. Just wanted to thank Trilogy, Chris, and the committee for working on this. And I don't think I've ever met any of the outreach workers out in the community. Hopefully I get that opportunity soon. But if you can convey to them just how, hopefully they're feeling it, how important and impactful this work is, and they're really on the front line of, I think, some of the most critical work that communities are doing. So thank you. And then I appreciate you, Cicely, and Councilmember Ravel for just clarifying for this body that, again, this is not a catch-all for all human relations and homelessness issues in Evanston. I have quite a few recommendations that are going to work their way through the Reimagining Public Safety Working Group that I chair, as well as some other committees. And we can do this is an excellent program, but we can kind of capsule this. This is its own thing. And hopefully we're still able to identify other needs that we may have in the community and other solutions. So thank you for coming to speak, Cicely, and it's good to see you.
You too. One thing I forgot to mention, and Chris, you can elaborate on this, is they do wear plain clothes and they drive regular cars for the, confidentiality, I guess I will say, and respect of the clients that they're serving. And so we initially, as a committee, had a different idea. We are not the best experts, so Chris and his team helped educate us on that. And so they might show up and be talking to someone you have no idea who they are, because we want to respect people's privacy in that way. So you might have actually seen some folks and just, don't recognize them.
Very great. Okay. Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Councilmember Ravel. A couple of questions. One, I guess, is probably to Chris regarding 911 versus 988. And if you could provide some simple guidance for not only myself, but I'm sure a lot of others, when would someone call 911 and when would someone call 988, since it's a new thing?
Yeah, so for anything that is potentially a medical situation, you're still going to want to call 911. So there are some crisis models that include a paramedic on the team. One example would be one of the pilots in the city of Chicago, but that is not what this program is with the state. So if something could be a medical crisis, always still 911, including there are some things that are high chance of being medical that may look like mental health. So like a stroke, for example, or, someone experiencing confusion due to a medical crisis. And so we can also provide that consultation if someone calls us. That does happen fairly frequently. But so anything medical, still 911, as well as anything where the risk of harm to someone is extremely immediate. So that doesn't mean, say someone's made a threat to harm themselves or someone else. I would still reach out to us or 988 as long as that person isn't right there with access to that means of harm and sort of going to act quickly on it. So really the two reasons to call 911 are medical or immediacy, as well as sort of looking at what someone's purpose is in calling. If the purpose is not just to get that person's support, but the purpose is, to remove someone because they're trespassing or other reasons that some people call 911 that overlap with potential mental health symptoms, you're still going to want to call 911 because when we come out, we're going to be assessing and providing support to the individual and assessing any immediate safety risk, but we're not, our biggest responsibility is to the individual. So those are the reasons you would still call 911. In terms of the question of whether to call us directly or 988, what we kind of say is because 988 is still gaining traction, if what you need is a mobile response, still call us directly. You'll get through faster, you'll go through less steps, and there's sort of
I guess to clarify, my question is not whether we should call you directly or call 988, but who should call 988 under what circumstances? Is that somebody that is themselves experiencing acute crisis and they call 988 because of a concern about themselves? Or if I witness somebody who appears to be in mental distress, but perhaps no immediate threat, in my opinion, do I call 988 or should I call 911?
So it's not about who you are, it's about what the situation is with which one you should call. So anyone can call either one. So 988 isn't only for people calling for themselves. You can call on behalf of a loved one. So yeah, I don't know how to answer your question really, because like it's not based on the person, it's based on the situation, which one you should call.
Okay. And who answers the phone when we call 988?
I think, so this is Chris, I'm going to jump in real quick. So 988 is a national number, and so it's like almost like the runaway hotline, right? So what Chris is saying is we would prefer you call Trilogy directly, and that number's on the mental health website and on the flyer, because when it goes through 988, it is routed through a number of people, right? So that might take a while. If you call Trilogy directly, they have a cell phone with them. They're within their service vicinity. They can get here faster.
And also, I thought 988 was where you could talk, almost like talking with a therapist.
You can do either one.
Right. So, if what you want is to talk to somebody about your crisis, call 988.
But here in Evanston, you can also call St. Francis Hospital.
Right, okay.
So many options.
There's a lot of options, but
Yeah.
if you are in distress, if someone else is in distress, you can call Trilogy directly and get a direct response from our service providers.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for clarifying. I do have one other
Sure,
question
okay.
with regards to the outreach workers, and I forget the number, it was 20-some outreach workers, 22?
They're mental health
Crisis
crisis
response.
responders.
Mental health crisis responders. Are all 22 kind of cycling through Evanston, or do we have folks that are assigned to Evanston and starting to get to know people and establish some relationships?
So they all work in all of our service area. So we found just the flow of calls, that makes the most sense because people are most available. And to answer your last question about who answers 988 calls, so they're answered by different call centers throughout the state. The largest one is called PATH, based out of Bloomington. So when someone calls, that call center answers, a crisis counselor talks to the person, and then if they're needing local support through a mobile response, then they call us. So, and that's where it came in, what Cicely and Councilmember Bell were saying of like, if you know that you want a mobile response, you can cut out that step and call us directly. Right. But if you're just looking for someone to talk to, then 988 is a good support because they have more capacity.
Is it the case where in Evanston somebody might call 911, which warrants, which police or fire would respond to, upon arrival of Evanston Public Safety Services, they determine that Trilogy would be more appropriate and they call in Trilogy?
Yes.
Yeah, that happens on almost a daily basis.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
And I just was reminded that you can call 311 as well, and 311 can get you the number to Trilogy. I mean, that should be on their things to do. And we have had some success when you call 911, when they triage your call. We have asked if they triage the call and they think it's not a fire or police issue, that they also send Trilogy out.
Yeah, everybody's still learning the ropes.
Yes.
Right, thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one with
Yeah.
these questions.
Councilmember Reed. Oops, where did he go? I'm over here. Oh, there. Did you had your light on? Oh, okay, Councilmember Kelly, go ahead.
So, thank you very much for the presentation this evening and for all the work. So our 911, the people who answer 911, they're trained on how to direct people to? So as opposed to EPD, someone getting there and saying, oh, this requires, are the people who answer the phone at 911 trained to know which way to direct?
So they do you want to answer this one? They do go through extensive training. Part of what our committee offered to them was some training. Was it Cahoots?
Cahoots.
Yeah. Cahoots does some technical training. We did not, that did not happen, but we did have some funding to take, have our staff do some training. I think it was in the middle of the pandemic. But they are trained, to triage calls for a variety of things, not just for the Trilogy service. And then we have provided them with this service as an option, to send people out to. So sometimes, well, I shouldn't say but you could call before, and maybe if it wasn't an issue, they could send out someone, or they can, refer you over to the crisis line, like at Amita, St. Francis. Now this is another option they have to use.
Do we have data on that? Like how many times 911 has redirected to, or has directed to Trilogy, just to get some?
Yeah, I think, Chris, were you all putting that together for your yearly report?
Yeah, so we do that quarterly. I would have to pull out the Evanston specific one, but I can send that to council in an email.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I could get it to the council.
That would be great, thank you. And so are most of the calls, are they from 911 routing the call to Trilogy, or is it mostly people calling Trilogy or 988 directly?
It's a pretty big mix. The largest category is self, second largest is family. So as of like our most recent quarterly data, which is April through June, just because we're about to finish this quarter, in terms of who called, it was 43% self, 18% family, 13% police, 10% community organizations, and then 6% hospital.
So when it's self, if it's 43%, does that mean, could that be divided between calling 911 or calling Trilogy? I just would like to get an idea as to, because I think people will always, 911 is always at people's fingertips, and I'm just wondering how often 911 is routing the response to Trilogy.
Yeah, so that entire 43% is people calling us directly, and then people routing through 911 or police notifying us is in the police 13%.
Okay. So Councilmember Reed, you did have your light on once upon a time. Did you still have a?
Yes. Well, did you?
One more call. Do we know, in that report that you'll give us, we'll see data, like how many roughly a day? Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I didn't have questions. I just really wanted to say, as Councilmember Burns said, thank you to the whole team. I am really excited about this, really excited to see the living room move forward. It's in the 8th Ward. And I have had the opportunity to run into one of the outreach workers. I was near Trader Joe's, a spot we're familiar with, and the outreach worker came up and interacted in plain clothes, interacted with the folks who are out there panhandling, as we know at Trader Joe's. And, it's just wonderful to see, this kind of engagement in the city. So thank you.
Great, thanks. And we were also going to hear from staff about the living room. Do we have any?
I did have one last question here.
Oops. Okay, yeah.
Yes, for Chris, but I mentioned at the last update that if we could get Evanston specific data, that would be helpful. I know you said that was somewhat difficult to do, but will we be able to get that moving forward?
Yeah, so I had sent that for April through June, and so I'm going to do, because we just have a quarter that's about to end, then I can also include that with that as well, so it's more up to date.
Okay, thank you.
And just my last plug, and I'll leave you all alone. So they are mental health crisis response team. I think it's important because when we think outreach, we know we have an outreach team here, and also we think outreach like they're going out to find clients. That is not the scope of their work. So I just want to be careful because I know you all have talked a lot about having some other service provision. And if we want to be clear on who's doing what, that, they are responding to mental health crises. They are not just kind of driving around outreaching, offering services to people. I know it's a small thing, but it'll help people to clarify when you're looking for other service delivery that, they are responding to a need that someone brings to their attention.
Yeah, good point. Yep. So Allison, you were going to tell us about the living room.
Good evening, members of City Council, Mayor Pro Tem, Clerk Mendoza, and City Manager Stowe. Allison Leipziger, Policy Coordinator. I have a very short update on the living room, which is that we just last week got some potential drawings back from architects, and our sort of baseline is coming in a little bit above what's been allotted for the capital improvement for this building. So you all approved about $250,000, not about, you approved $250,000 to renovate the 2-bedroom house on St. Francis campus. The sort of baseline is coming in a little bit closer to $600,000, which is different, and really not too much of a surprise, honestly, that the house does not have an HVAC system at all needs to be ADA compliant, and just in order to make it functional and safe and usable, it's going to be closer to $600,000 for the capital improvements. So I've begun some discussions with the mayor about potential fundraising options. If anybody else has some ideas, that would be great. Open to suggestions. But the plan is, like the baseline plan is actually really nice, really functional, is going to work really well for that space, and should be great. So I'm happy to answer questions.
You had a question for Councilmember Reed?
Yes, thank you, Allison. Well, maybe there. So I am curious. So I'm sorry. The initial investment that the city made was
250 for the capital.
Yeah, it was 250,000, and you're now saying that the project is short. What again? Or there's
It will cost, in order to make it usable, about 600,000.
Is this a new number that we weren't aware of, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, to be clear. And so, speaking of suggestions, I mean, we still have ARPA funds. We see this as important. If we need to kick in, another whatever it is from ARPA, I think that I'm hoping, and I think this council is committed to doing that for this really important project.
Thanks.
Councilmember Burns.
This is not only about this, but just an update on, I know we were having some conversations with the St. Francis Hospital, I believe, and maybe possibly Evanston Community Foundation. So whether you want to do that update now or offline, I'm just curious how those conversations are going
About funding?
Yeah, about funding, yeah. And I know some of that was like ongoing funding to support the program, and I think some of it might have been capital.
Yeah,
but I'm
that's
not sure.
mostly been about operational,
That's
and not
operational, okay.
capital.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for being with us this evening and for your partnership. The Trilogy program is just really very exciting for Evanston. I wanted to just mention the other organizations that have been working with us to develop this whole approach. Peer Services, the Moran Center, Connections for the Homeless, Impact Behavioral Health, and a representative from the Chamber of Commerce. So we've had really robust participation from a number of organizations in the community, and it's coming to fruition now with the Trilogy program. So thank you, and we look forward to the continued partnership. What?
2 citizens.
Oh, yeah, and we did have some, yes, we
We
did.
did have a citizen myself. I'm a citizen now.
Well,
And,
right, okay.
And
Seamark.
Evangeline Seamark, yes.
Yeah, right,
Was
yeah.
great. I
Yeah,
think
she
we had
was
one more
great.
citizen too, but I can't remember. All right, anyway, they've been great.
Okay, great.
All right,
Well, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to SP2, which is our parking study, and I believe we have a presentation.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Clerk, Member of the Council, City Manager. So yes, we have a presentation. This is way overdue. It was, Council asked for a parking study in 2019. We issue the RFP. We received 3 bids. 2 of them was good. And we choose the company WGN. It was the best bid. The online, because of the COVID, we have to postpone the data. So they actually performed the study on 2022, so it's very current. And I think they're online. So Ashley and Benjamin, are you hearing us?
Yes.
Perfect.
Good.
We are here.
Floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you. Going to share my screen. Bear with me one moment. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so good evening. My name is Ashley Orr, a professional engineer with over 7 years of experience in roadway design, traffic analysis, and parking planning. Joining me today is Ben Sands, an industry veteran with well over 20 years of experience in both the planning and operation of parking facilities. We are thrilled for the opportunity to have worked with the City of Evanston Parking Services team on this parking study. Michael Riviera and Mark Tureen, thank you, and are here to briefly present our findings and recommendations to you this evening. So first, we'd like to just run through a brief agenda of tonight's presentation. First, outlining the purpose of the study and our project approach, which included an existing parking conditions review, a pure city review, and observations at Northwestern football games and special events. So first and foremost, the Evanston Parking Study seeks to determine the best solutions for resolving current parking challenges and assist in proactive parking planning to contribute to the city's growth. The study includes analysis and recommendations that endeavor to, 1, address the changing patterns and behaviors of parking in your city, 2, provide an objective perspective of approaches local and other communities around the country have taken, and 3, make recommendations to improve and position the Evanston parking system for the most effective operation and the best possible parking experience for your residents, of course, and business owners, but also visitors to your city. Evanston has nearly 7,000 on-street and off-street designated spaces throughout the municipality, equating to 0.9 spaces per capita. We should note that this does not include on-street parking within the city's 25 residential permit areas. So again, a pretty high number of spaces that the city has to manage. The City of Evanston Parking Services staff manages these on and off-street parking facilities, employing 11 full-time non-police enforcement personnel. And these individuals issue parking tickets throughout Evanston and also serve as curbside customer service ambassadors to the city. While much of Evanston is residential, there are 4 notable retail, entertainment, and recreational areas that supply the majority of Evanston's designated public parking, as can be seen on the screen. This includes the Downtown Parking District, the Central Street Corridor Parking District, the Main Dempster Mile Parking District, and the Lakefront area. A review of some existing rates and time limits on street and off street. Typically on street, rates range from 50 cents to $2 per hour, with $3 per hour for out-of-town visitors in the Lakefront area. The majority of these spaces have a 2-hour time limit and shift to 4-hour time limits after 5 p.m. Off-street includes 3 gated garages and 37 surface lots. In the garages, fees are paid in tiered rate bands depending on the hours parked, not to exceed $18 per day. Monthly permits range from $115 to $130 per month. In the surface lots, metered parking is typically $2 per hour, and monthly permits in those surface lots are typically $90 per month. A core component of this study included a peer review and comparing the City of Evanston's operations, policies, and rates to other progressive cities around the country. We worked very closely with parking services staff to nail down a list of 15 cities who were ultimately chosen and invited to participate via an emailed questionnaire. Cities around the country were considered for inclusion in the study based on the criteria that you can see on the screen. And we should note that while none of the cities checked all of these boxes and were directly comparable to the City of Evanston, all of the cities checked at least one or more of the boxes and appeared to be good and viable in this comparison. Of those 15 cities that we chose, 7 cities responded and were willing to participate, and those are the cities that you can see on the map on the screen. And open sources were used to provide the local Chicago context whenever it was deemed appropriate. So now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Ben for some context on the study.
Thanks very much, Ashley. What you see before you is the chart of on-street parking rate comparisons for the cities that were polled. And as you can see, both the average and the maximum and minimum rates for the City of Evanston fall on the lower end of the spectrum, especially when you consider that the $3 is only applied to the lakefront areas and not applied to the downtown core. Our recommendations included raising the $2 rate for on-street parking to a rate that would achieve the desired 10 to 20% vacancy ratio per block. We didn't want to provide a uniform rate strategy for all blocks because all blocks are not the same. Individual blocks that experience higher rates of occupancy and demand should be priced accordingly. Occupancy should drive rates. Moving on to the residential parking permits and comparisons. As you'll see here, the permit fees for Evanston are very similar to many of the cities that were polled. Our recommendations is that the permit fees for Evanston need to be adapted to a demand-based model, essentially where the areas that experience higher occupancy and higher demand for space. I think this speaks to the citizen comment that came in during the preamble. They need to have an adaptation of policy and price to affect the demand for that given area. And as we move on, garage daily maximums, the rate bands charged by the city are certainly different than many other municipalities and private parking entities charge. The maximum rate is not achieved until very late in the day after a 12-hour period or more is achieved. And typically maximum rates are achieved somewhere in that 8-hour time frame. So our recommendation was to, it is also worth noting that the parking rates that are charged in the surface lots at $2 per hour technically exceed the rates that are being charged in the garage. We felt that those needed to be brought closer into alignment, and we recommended that the city reassess the structure of the rates for the garages to adapt a more hourly oriented rate. Garage permit rates. So this is very similar. I think the main thing we took away from this exercise was that the rates charged in the city of Evanston or by the city of Evanston are significantly lower than the rates charged by private entities operating parking for a fee in the city. And as you can see by the chart here, there again, Evanston is towards the lower end of the spectrum in terms of the fees charged. And there's not a lot of deviation by location. So certainly, again, would encourage and recommend a more adaptive strategy that allows for fluctuation of the rates to ensure the vacancy percentages and demands are met. And as far as the surface lot, we recommended that surface lot permit rate remain the same.
Moving on also to an assessment of parking rules and restrictions in central business districts. This included questions pertaining to demand-based pricing in the cities that were polled, and then also regarding employee permits. So in the case of demand-based pricing, we got a lot of great data and input from cities, but we wanted to point out several items to you. For example, Portsmouth practices demand-based pricing in the form of their stay and pay price curve. This payment schedule was designed to economically encourage space turnover at the third hour in their high occupancy zones by raising the hourly rate for longer-term parkers. In Cincinnati, on-street rates are demand-based, ranging from 75 cents to $1.50 per hour on neighborhood streets, but then increased to $2 or $2.75 per hour in the central business district. Additionally, Cincinnati offers reduced evening and weekend rates in some underutilized locations. So our recommendation is to consider implementing a demand-based parking pricing program similar to Portsmouth's that raises rates after a certain time threshold on key downtown streets to further encourage turnover. And then also to keep reduced evening and weekend rates in underutilized locations to increase parking utilization. In terms of employee permits, among the cities that were polled, offering on-street parking permits to business employees within residential permit zones was not common practice. It should be noted that both Minneapolis and Columbus allow employees to park within residential parking zones using specific employee permits that are restrictive by time period and are extremely expensive. So our recommendation is not to create an on-street employee permit program within residential permit zones without active management and review of the program to understand the effects that it would have on the residential community.
Next, we looked at the parking fines that were charged for parking enforcement and did a comparison both of the fine amounts using just a sample of expired meter fines and then also looking at the volume of tickets that are issued per capita comparing Evanston to the other cities. And as you can see, again, Evanston is on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of the parking fines that are charged. And as a result, we believe they're on the upper end of the of the spectrum for the number of tickets issued. Some of that may be attributable to the collegiate environment and the flow of users, but it's also attributable to the diligence of the Parking Services Division in terms of upholding the controls that are in place. I would say that having a suppressed enforcement rate or a parking fine scenario does typically encourage a type of cat and mouse behavior between the parking users and the enforcement staff, where they're essentially like to test the boundaries and controls that the city sets with parking enforcement. And increasing that fine amount does typically increase compliance with the rules and regulations. So our recommendation is that an assessment of the parking fines is necessary to bring those fines in line with the actual expense involved in issuing the fines, issuing the tickets, collecting on the tickets. Thank you, Bill.
Another key component of this study was to observe parking operations and challenges during Northwestern football games and other special events. And this was specifically to understand the concerns of local neighborhood residents. Specifically, observations were performed at two highly attended events, the Northwestern versus Iowa football game on November 6th of last year, and the Northwestern versus Indiana men's basketball game on February 8th of this year. Again, our report dives into a lot of observations that were gleaned from our time on site, but some key observations that we'd like to point out to you tonight is that, as you know, Evanston does see a high demand for on-street spaces on its neighborhood streets during football games. However, we did not experience or see any unsafe or inaccessible on-street conditions in which emergency vehicles could not traverse narrow streets due to illegal parking. Evanston residents can park for free in Municipal Lot 54 with a paid wheel tax. Evanston should consider charging a flat rate for all parkers regardless of residency status to accrue additional revenue and ensure that residents are not taking advantage of the opportunity to relocate their personal vehicles to sell space on their lawns and driveways. Obviously, this is not something that we know is happening in Evanston, but we've seen this in other jurisdictions, and it is a possibility. On that note, Evanston does not experience rampant illegal parking on lawns and private property, but as you can see in the photo on the bottom left, there is a small group of residents that are taking advantage of the opportunity to advertise and sell parking space on their lawns. Consistent enforcement of city code by police is necessary to curbing this illegal behavior. North of Isabella Street within the city of Wilmette, many of the neighborhood streets have semi-permanent city-issued signs, as you can see in the center of the screen, prohibiting parking before and after Northwestern games. While parking is prohibited on Lincoln Street, Central Street, and Isabella Street in Evanston, Evanston has no such restrictions on neighborhood streets. And lastly, we wanted to just point out that there were significant delays that were observed at the intersection of Central Street and Ashland Avenue in particular. So this is just something to note as we move forward to the basketball game observations. In an effort to understand the specific nuances of a non-football game day event, the men's basketball game versus Indiana was identified for observation. Obviously, there are going to be some key differences between a basketball game and a football game, and they're worth noting. Of course, significantly less spectators and tailgating at basketball games, and non-season ticket holders are permitted to park in Northwestern lots 101 and 102, whereas these lots are available only to season ticket holders for football games. The city of Evanston does not prohibit on-street parking on Lincoln, Central, and Isabella during basketball games as they do for football games. And the city of Wilmette also does not appear to restrict parking on their streets just north of the arena. So to sort of tie all this together, our observations revealed from both studies that Evanston doesn't have a game day parking problem. While there are certainly ways to improve the parking conditions as described on the previous slide, observations before the basketball game especially reinforce the fact that issues are more closely tied to traffic congestion and circulation, especially at the ticketed entrances to the northwestern lots 101 and 102. Evanston must work with Northwestern University to establish better entry and exit procedures that do not clog Central Street and Isabella Street. Of course, there are options if additional or more restrictive permit regulations are desired. Given that Residential Permit District 6 surrounds the stadium and arena, it's an easy candidate for instating more restrictive permit regulations encompassing these events. And our recommendation is that the city continue to monitor occupancies and conditions in the affected neighborhoods and adjust policies if this is deemed necessary. So with that, the recommendations provided in this study are of course not all encompassing and should not be viewed as an ultimate solution to all of the parking problems in the city of Evanston. But the point of this study was to give you a snapshot into what other progressive cities around the country are doing and provide general recommendations that could be further honed with additional occupancy data. Ultimately, Evanston's parking assets are the first and last impressions that visitors have of your city, and they must be managed in a way that is efficient, adaptable, equitable, and accessible for all of your residents, business owners, and visitors. The recommendations provided should be viewed as a stepping stone, guiding the city of Evanston to reframe and modernize the conversation surrounding the management of parking in your city. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ashley. Any questions, concerns?
Well, just before we launch into the discussion, I neglected to ask for a motion so that we can have this
move
before
approval
us,
of the discussion.
to accept and place it on file.
I move item SP2.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Reed has his light on.
Thank you. Yeah, so I both appreciate our city staff, for leading on this, and of course WGI for doing the work. One of the, and I, Mike and Lucas and I, particularly Mike in his former role, which was Lucas's role, knows how supportive I am of increasing our revenue from parking, because it's one of, if you think about it, it's one of the greatest subsidies that we give to residents. I think it's fair to categorize free parking or underpriced parking as a subsidy, because we, as the city, the taxpayers, have to maintain the infrastructure, and if we're not collecting the proper revenue to maintain that infrastructure, that is the almost definition of a subsidy. We're giving it away below value. And so this will help bring us in line. Some of this will help bring us in line with winnowing down on that subsidy and allocating that money to things that I think many of us would think are more important, such as our environmental sustainability initiatives, such as affordable housing and other places where where if we end this subsidy, where these funds can go. In fact, we in part did something similar this year by increasing the wheel tax and dedicating that money toward green infrastructure. And so that would be $250,000 annually that we can bring in on that. And I think we need to think about that more and more. One of the questions that I have is relating to residential parking permits and using a demand based approach on this. I wonder if WGI uses an equity lens when looking at some of that stuff, because I represent the south end of Evanston. I know we have our fair share of residential parking permits in my ward. It tends to be in areas where there are apartment buildings, and those apartment buildings tend in Evanston to be where our more moderate and low-income residents live. If you go to the north part of town, where they have driveways everywhere, they don't need to park on the street because they have a driveway. But in dense areas where more low-income and moderate-income folks live, this is an issue. So is equity something that's taken into consideration when you all look at residential parking permits and demand-based pricing?
Certainly, I can speak to this, Ashley. I'm sorry. Certainly, you know, equity is always part of the conversation. You know, many times we've seen that cities, you know, adopt kind of an equity exclusion or discount for, you know, based on socioeconomic status or income, and as a mechanism to ensure equitable access for citizens of lower income. And so there are certainly ways to work around, you know, the permit fees as they're charged and take into account kind of citizen circumstances and needs.
Thank you. For communities that maybe aren't as progressively minded as Evanston, I'd hope maybe that can work it into your presentations in the future. So I also am curious, you know, what you showed there was that, you know, we have, you know, fines, parking fines that are much lower than some of the comparable communities, but our enforcement is much higher than I think almost all of the communities, if not maybe one or two are higher than us. But so, and I heard you say that you think there is a correlation, there could be a correlation between increased parking fines and compliance or the decrease, a decrease in the number of fines that are issued.
Certainly, as the consequence becomes more severe, the compliance rate will increase.
Have you, or this question is for staff too. I know our parking fines are flat across the board, correct?
Correct.
And so then I guess this is maybe WGI or the staff. Have we heard of communities that have issued parking fines as defined by certain districts or zones where, you know, maybe parking fines downtown may be higher than parking fines in the neighborhoods?
Certainly.
Okay. So I am, so I'm highly supportive of this. I really think this is a huge issue that we should be looking at. I know some of my colleagues have read, you know, and the city manager's just talking to him, works by folks like Donald Shoup, and I think his book is called The High Cost of Free Parking. There's, and I still didn't look up his name. There's another gentleman who writes really, has a few really good books on this. And I think we really need to start taking seriously what the city is giving up in financial gains to subsidize free parking. And I know that, you know, some folks say that, oh, if we raise parking rates, you know, I've read, you know, the Evanston Now comments, the 50 comments about this or whatever it was, and folks are concerned that if we raise parking rates, you know, our businesses are going to suffer, and, you know, then our entire local economy will essentially come crashing down if we do that. But there's plenty of research that shows when you price parking correctly, you can actually have a positive impact on the financial business, on the business districts. You can increase revenue, increase sales tax, increase the local businesses' revenue by creating that turnover, getting more customers in, and I think there are plenty of things we can do to gain this extra revenue, to make sure that we have the funds necessary to maintain our road and parking infrastructure, which, again, to remind this body needs no reminding, that we have $100 million unfunded pension liability, pension liability, infrastructure liability, and by appropriately capturing revenue for parking, that can be a substantial boost to helping us winnow down that unfunded liability, to make sure that we're providing some of the best infrastructure for our residents. And I think that is what residents will appreciate when they see that their roads are paved, that their curbs are properly maintained, and that our infrastructure is where in the condition that it needs to be in. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Harris.
Good evening. Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Reed said about density, that we really need to make sure that our densely populated areas are not subjected to higher rates, because that is our lower income usually. income population, and that would be very disconcerting to me if that is how we look at this scale.
Okay, and Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have a couple questions and then some feedback. So 2 questions for Ashley or Benjamin. One is just a point of information. If you could go to where the page where it listed spaces per capita, and I just want to make sure we're understanding that number correctly. It says 0.9 spaces per capita. I'm wondering if that should be 0.09. It's on page 16 of 431 in our packet, which is page 3 of 6 of the executive summary, which is
Sure.
Right there, yeah. So if we have 6,870 spaces in a population of 78,000, I think that should be.
So we can certainly verify that.
Yeah, so I suspect that just might be a typo. It should be 0.09 spaces per capita.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
Yeah, but so just confirming if that is indeed the case, that wouldn't affect any of your other calculations. It's just a typo in the.
It was just a typo.
Correct, just a typo.
Good. Thank you for clarifying that. And then if you could go to the graph or the chart where you showed the fine comparison.
Mm-hmm.
That one. Okay, so the chart on the right, number of tickets issued annually per capita, are those tickets just for expired meter fines? Or is that all tickets, including street failure to move for street sweeping, which thank you for, you're welcome very much for the hundreds of dollars that I pay to the city of Evanston every year.
Thank you.
So these values will include all tickets issued.
Okay, not just
for parking violations.
Okay.
Not just meter.
Okay,
meter
thank you for
fines.
clarifying that. And then some feedback for staff. I hear what Councilmember Reed is saying about the potential impact or lack thereof, perhaps, on businesses. And I think if our downtown business district were flooded with customers, those arguments would carry a lot of weight with me, a lot of weight. We're not in that condition right now. And until we recover from the pandemic and until we have our downtown business district is once again thriving and bustling and things are at capacity, I would be very reluctant to raise parking rates downtown.
Centrally, this is just a report which was ordered by City Council. So this is the baseline where we're standing on our parking operation. It's up to the body to decide if we want to raise or lower the prices. There's a lot of different opinion about this, but it seemed like we are under, not over. So there is room for improvement. It depends how fast we want to improve on the rates. Also, I want to remind everybody, the parking also costs. Like we just approved $1 million this year, just concrete repairs into the parking garages. So this is only has to somehow, we have to recoup our investment. There's investment on equipment, there's investment on the licensing, there's a lot of things which you also have to spend to make sure we can issue the tickets. So luckily we have a great report. I think the consultant did a great job. We have a good baseline. It's now up to the body.
Yeah, and I did say reluctant. I didn't say outright refuse. So.
I know.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Councilmember Sufferton.
Thank you. This question, I suppose, is for staff, Lucas or Luke. How are we going to reconcile this with the business district study that's expected to be completed in January? Are we going to merge these? Because it's very likely that the opinions expressed about parking in that study will be different than these. Is there a plan to consolidate that information before we make any decisions?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, City Clerk, Luke Stowe, City Manager. We actually spoke about that today in a staff meeting, and our thought process is we would like to wait until January, February when we have the business district survey to kind of merge the two and get feedback from that report along with this before making any substantial changes.
Okay, so would you anticipate that for budget purposes we would hold parking level, or we would consider suggestions that are made?
I think staff's perspective would be to not make any substantial parking changes this fall until we have the results of the business district survey.
Okay, and that's end of January is the?
January, February.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other council members who have a question or a comment? I'll throw in a couple. So, given that the 7th Ward butts up against Wilmette, which has ample free on-street parking, I'm concerned that that wasn't considered a peer city or considered in the comparisons. But and I do have to echo the remarks we heard from Ken Prosky about the impact of basketball games have a huge impact. The residents come home after work and they can't find a place to park. So we do have a parking problem on game days around the campus. And I guess, I think involving the business community in discussing the findings from this report will be a very important next step. So, but very interesting and really appreciate having that information.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Ben. Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Then I think we're ready to vote on the motion to accept on place and file.
Councilmember Burns?
And all those in favor.
All, you want to do?
All those in favor?
You want to just do all in favor?
Sure. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Excellent. All right. Then we're ready for SP3. And so could I have a motion to approve this item? It's the plat of subdivision for 1224 Washington.
I move approval of SP3 Resolution 89R22, approving a
And is
plat
there
of
a second?
subdivision.
Second.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Councilmember Heracardis?
I guess I'll kind of explain. So early on, this was brought before the Land Use Commission back in February, and then came before Planning and Development. And at that time in April, the curb cut for the property subdivision was removed. And then since then, with talking with the owner and also with staff, we found that having the easement through the back of the property is not kind of the best solution to kind of having a subdivision. And so the owner reapplied for the subdivision, and I would like for us to move forward with the original land use committee recommendation that he had originally.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. So I'll support this. I just, did P&D though vote not to, against the curb cut? Just so I'm clear, I know.
P&D voted to say no curb cut.
They amended the land use commission recommendation.
To allow the additional lot, but just not the curb?
Yeah, not the curb cut.
And you're recommending the curb cut?
Yes.
Okay. So I love the project and the business and the music. I'm going to support this, but I wish because there is a curb cut on Asbury, I wish that could continue with an easement for the second property so as not to bring a curb cut into a residential block with St. Nick's down the street. But that you say that's already been explored, that idea of extending where the curb cut is and creating an easement for the other property?
Yeah, if you look at the property, I mean, there's the current curb cut, the property owner parks his car there. You'd have to extend that through, and it'd be, I don't know how you'd park your car and have the easement. I don't know if Sue wants to or talk about it a little bit.
I can speak to it. So currently the kind of lot configuration, Liz Williams, planning manager. The lot configuration has access on the corner coming off of Asbury It is sufficient currently for that property's parking. That's what they're using that area for. When you introduce the need for the cross-access for the interior lot, it would potentially jeopardize the ability for that property to park a car plus have enough space to get that secondary car through to the interior lot. So it presents some real challenges from an access standpoint. So essentially that interior lot may have or need variations in the future in order to meet zoning ordinance requirements.
Okay, and so, and in order to make that extra subdivision, it has to have a curb cut?
It may not need to have a curb cut, but I think request before you is that it wouldn't be prohibited for the future development to request a curb cut once they have kind of a design for that.
But it's not required in terms of creating a second.
It is allowed by code, and they will have to provide by right parking for the lot. So if they don't want to have parking on that interior lot, they would need a variation from our zoning ordinance to do that.
Okay, so it's not required. You're saying you would allow it.
It could potentially be allowed through.
Or if there was a parking space made that, as you go into the curb cut and turn left, potentially there could be an additional parking space. I just wish there were a way to get around this curb cut on this residential street with, like I said, St. Nick's School down the block. Just seems like it would be better for the neighborhood.
Noted.
It's a difficult situation, yeah. Councilmember Reed.
Yes, I am in support of this. I have a very similar situation that will be coming to council in the next few months for curb cut in relation to that, and the Land Use Commission may not support it similarly, but I think and there's no school near my residence house. I'll note that, but I do think this makes sense, and we shouldn't be making life harder for residents. I know that part of the arguments against things like the curb cut, are walkability, and I think that's what Councilmember Kelly was getting to. But I think Councilmember Revelle and Councilmember Stafford who have wards that have driveways. Well, certainly in Councilmember Revelle's ward.
You should take a walk. You see, like the driveway surplus doesn't exist.
Okay, well, let's focus on the 1224 Washington.
My point being is that maybe I'll speak for your ward. I've come through your ward all the time. There's plenty of driveways in the 7th Ward. Those communities are, I think, some of the most walkable, beautiful parts of the city. And I don't know if there's some excess of danger caused by, those curb cuts. And so I support this.
Okay. So then I think, seeing no more lights, I think we're ready for a vote. Should we do a roll call on this one?
Yes. Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton? Aye. Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hardicaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Newsome?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Councilmember Revelle?
Okay. So the motion passes, and we have a plat of subdivision with a curb cut allowed. So now we're ready to move on to the consent agenda, and I would like people to tell me what items need to be pulled off the consent agenda. P1?
You already have A1, A8, and A12.
And then P4 did not make it out of P&D.
Wait, so I have A1, A8, and A12.
And H1,
And what?
H1 for the amendment.
H1, okay, yep, I got H1.
And then P4 didn't make it out of
And
planning. and
P4
development.
was defeated in committee.
Correct.
P2, we have to suspend the rules. And P1, okay.
And R1 and R2.
And which one?
R1 and R2.
R1 and R2. Okay, so let me run through what I have. I have A1, A8, A12. A12 was tabled, so that's off. P1, P2, because of suspension for the rule of the rules, and P4, and then H1, and R1 and R2. Is that everything? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Should we have a roll call on that, please?
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris? Councilmember Nguyen? Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye. So we have the consent agenda approved on a 9-0 vote. So, moving on to item A1, which is the rules, the bills list, which was amended in committee.
Item
I
A1
move-
was amended in committee to include a payment of, I believe it was up to $1,200 to one Jordy, $2,100 to, I forget the gentleman's name, Jordy,
A contractor for the clerk's office.
contractor for the clerk's office. That motion passed in committee, so the bills list with that amendment goes to council.
Okay, are we ready to vote on that, or does? A1.
So just to clarify, item A1 is the bills list, which was amended in ANPW to include $2,100, a payment of up to $2,100 for a former employee of the clerk's office.
Councilmember Nguyen.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. This is CM1 or this is A1?
A1.
A1.
A1, okay. While I have the mic, I will say that I will be voting no because the prior city council and the city council have both voted no on the payment of that item. And so I cannot vote for it, even when it's bundled in with payroll and bills.
Councilmember Sufferton.
This is a question for Corporation Counsel. How does this comply with the Open Meetings Act? The amount is being increased, correct?
That's correct. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Clerk, City Manager, members of City Council, Nicholas Cummings, Corporation Counsel. There is concern by the Law Department that this would violate the Open Meetings Act because the City of Evanston publishes its bills list and puts the public on notice of what the City Council intends to take final action on. And so now you're adding a new item. Just to check ourselves, I did check with the previous interim Corporation Counsel, and he agreed that that is a potential violation of the Open Meetings Act. However, I guess procedurally as well, according to Robert's Rules of Order and even the City Council rules, this is essentially a reconsideration of final action already taken by the previous City Council and this City Council, and so it would be improper procedurally. There is a suggestion that was made at APW that this be brought back through the proper channels to bring it back on the bills list so that there's proper notice. I believe it was Councilmember Newsman made that statement at APW. And then, I guess the council could take it up then, but, the law department's position is that it's a matter that's been settled, and it would potentially put the city at risk for an Open Meetings Act violation.
Thank you. Councilmember Nusma, did you have your light on again?
I did. I'm going to defer for now, in case somebody else wants to speak to Council Cummings.
Yep. Councilmember Reed.
Yeah. I understand my colleagues such as Councilmember Nguyen who aren't going to vote for this for her reasons, and that's perfectly legitimate. But as far as this, I will say this is not an Open Meetings Act violation. We make amendments up and down on all kinds of items based on information. So if we have to raise a dollar amount or decrease a dollar amount. Those are things that happen during the normal course of business. And the Open Meetings Act it doesn't require us to publish a packet, to be clear. We do that voluntarily. What it does require is that we give a list of the items that will be on the agenda, so that folks have to know that we will be approving payroll and bills list, but we don't have to submit that to the public. So I just want to be clear that if your consideration is, hey, is this a violation of OMA, the clear answer would be no. I used to serve as the clerk and am very familiar with the Open Meetings Act and its rules. So that is not the case. I would also like to make clear, I sent some information to all of my colleagues earlier. Our former HR director or manager and our current CFO looked at the clerk's budget for 2020 and determined that this dollar amount was within the budget and was within the budget, and so this wouldn't have put the clerk's office over budget in that year. And the young man, who is still a college student, albeit by this point he's wrapping up his college education. Again, this is a resident of Evanston who did the work and was an exemplary employee. I hope we can support this. As far as reconsideration, that is a council rule, and the council has the ability. We could, we have this power. This is not a reconsideration of that specific vote. This is a new bringing up something similar, but it's bringing it up again. And that would be totally within our prerogative to do that.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Councilmember Ravel. Since this is presented as one package, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this vote. I was planning to do that anyway, since my wife's employer has a bill on this list for $32,000 or so. So I'm going to recuse myself.
Right, okay. And I just was reminded that I don't think we'd had a motion did we have a motion on this item?
Yes, if not, I can. So I'll move item A1 just for clarity.
And a second,
I believe it was moved by Councilmember Reed originally and seconded by Councilmember Harris.
It was? Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Burns.
I just want to say, in particular for the newer council members, that fundamentally this is about paying someone who performed work for the city. And I can tell you from someone that tracked not only this issue, but a lot of issues dealing with the clerk's office and the city, that a lot of this stuff stems from personal disagreements that current council members and former council members had with Councilmember Reed. Many of the people who were his biggest oppositions, just to speak plainly, as I'm known to do, are no longer here and lost in primary elections. There have been a lot of personal attacks and personal disagreements against Councilmember Reed that distract from what we're really being asked to do today, which is to pay someone who performed work for the city of Evanston with the understanding that they would be compensated, period. Y'all want to censure Councilmember Reed for issuing hiring someone during a hiring freeze, so be it. But again, somebody came here with the understanding that they would get paid. They previously worked for the city in this role and was compensated. And I don't think it's fair to them to miss out on compensation that they're due because of a mistake you think Councilmember Reed made with the budget that he had. He just circulated that around. This was a budget. This is an executive office. It was well within his budget. He did not go over budget in doing this. We all know during that time there were, I think at this point, 2 deputy clerks that were taken away from the office. This was a challenging time for the city, for the clerk's office. And again, I think a lot of this stuff is personal and has nothing to do with what we're considering here, which is paying someone that did work for the city, period. And if people want to take something up with Councilman Reed, do that separately, but let's compensate this individual. This individual did nothing wrong. It's $2,100. I don't understand why people are trying to die on this hill. This is not about Councilman Reed. This is about Jordy. right? That's what this vote is about. Thank you.
Okay, so can we have a roll call on this item? Roll call on item A1, the bills list. And yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
No.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Abstain.
Councilmember Nguyen?
No.
Councilmember Nusma?
Abstain.
Councilmember Ravel?
No. Do we have a tie or
A
something?
tie.
Is it a tie?
The tie, we have four yes, 4 no.
4-4.
Wait, how is it 4-4?
So it's Councilmember Burns, Councilmember Reed, Councilmember Hadakaris, and Councilmember Kelly voted aye.
Okay, and then we have
Councilmember Sufferton, Councilmember
and
Nguyen,
3 noes and 2
Nusma, and
abstentions.
Ravel.
So it's 4
And-
yeses, correct? So
4
it
yeses,
went-
4
it-
noes.
There couldn't have been 4 noes. There aren't that many council
Wait,
members.
sorry. Council,
We had 2 abstentions.
who else abstained? You abstained? Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so 4.
I think it's 4.
It carried, yeah.
It carried, yeah. It's 4-3 and then 2 abstentions.
So the motion did carry.
The motion passed.
Okay. Then the next item is A8, which was the amending, that item was amended in committee? Is that correct? Could I have someone to make a motion about A8, please? This is the floor at Robert Crown.
Sure. I'll move approval of the sole source agreement with Jenny Elstner Associates for investigative services related to the Robert Crown floor slab. And it was amended and approved in APW with the amendment for, instead of 46,000, for 12,800.
So 12,800?
Right.
Yeah, right, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Nusma.
And just to clarify, this was amended in A and PW. The dollar amount is now $12,800. I forwarded the text from Councilmember, the email from Councilmember Kelly that goes into the detail. I am going to oppose this. Concrete floors crack, and I have no reason to second-guess the experts that have been involved in this, so I'm going to oppose this. Having said that, $12,800 to put this behind us is maybe the price we would have to pay.
Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I came into this decision leaning towards not supporting it only because I thought this was part of a continuing vendetta against the Robert Crown, facility, people who disagree with it, and also just I'm not an expert on this, so I just didn't know enough at the time. I asked somebody that I know and trust in the ward that's a 30-year concrete person, and initially, based on how I phrased the question, this individual thought that, oh yeah, this is just regular stress cracking, as Councilmember Nusma suggested, but after providing more information about, again, this specific job, which I do think, even from this person's understanding, is different than what you may see in Walgreens or some other facility, that they assume that they were like, oh yeah, this what are you saying, like cracks the size of a nail, and I was like, well, it's a little bit bigger than a nail, and so I sent them the information that Mike Vasico sent us along with the photos, and they said unequivocally that this is something that really needs further investigation. They were a little apprehensive about the cost of $12,500 initially, and they started to talk about some other alternative options. But after walking through what we would get out of the phase one, they said, "Oh yeah, that's worth it." So again, I was coming into this probably a no vote just because of the original cost. I think was like $46,000. We amended that $12,500 phase one. Again, this is nothing against staff. Even Laura said this is not her specialty, area of specialty. this is the area of specialty for the individual that I talked to. Again, they've been laying these type of foundations down for over 30 years. And I think I have enough information to feel like we need to get some more information so we know what we're really dealing with here. And then we can kind of make the best judgment after we get that information. So I will be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reed.
Sorry. I also am supportive of this. The old adage that I used earlier was a penny wise, pound foolish. I think spending $12,800 to determine whether or not there is potentially a multi-$100,000 liability sitting out there that we, if we figure it out sooner, could maybe have a better case to go back to the developer and recoup our cost for repairing this, I think makes total sense. So I'm supportive.
Okay, seeing no more lights, I think we're
Yeah, I'm
ready.
sorry.
Whoops.
One other thing. I just want to say it was as much to do about the width of the cracks, but also how quickly it cracked. I just want to be clear on that. That if this was 6-7 years down the road, I think it would have been a different response. But I think it was how quickly it cracked and the width of the cracks is what the person that I talked to said. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's have a roll call on this item.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hedakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
No.
Councilmember Newsma.
No.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Seven, 2.
On a 7-2 vote, this item carries. All right, so now I think we are ready for item P1, the vacation rental. Would someone make a motion about that one? Hello?
Madam Chair, Mayor Pro Tem, I will move item P1, approval of a vacation rental license for 2545 Lawndale Avenue.
Second. All right. Councilmember Sufferton.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the neighbors have advocated for themselves very well. It's quite clear that they are opposed to it. It probably exposes some flaws in our process that should be considered, but I would just encourage a no vote.
Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
I don't have a microphone on. Okay, and it still somehow is projecting. So I generally would be supportive of the applicants because, as Councilmember Burns said, I generally would be supportive of the occupants. I mean the folks, the applicants, because our ordinance allows for it. And as Councilmember Burns said, however, as Councilmember Burns pointed out, there is not a clear process for how you either approve or deny these requests. And so, similar to liquor licenses, as he pointed out. And so, given that, the only real mechanism that I have to judge whether or not this is good in someone else's ward is by listening to the, council member of that ward, sans a clear process. It seems like the process is you rely on, the community and the representative of that community to help lead, guide where we are. And so, I think that, I personally am voting no. I would typically support this. I told the applicants if they want to come to the 8th Ward, I think they can find a nice property there and, be able to visit dad and mom and dad often. And I would likely be supportive of the vacation rental license there. But in this case, I think, I'm going to be voting the way Councilmember Sufferton is requesting for his residents. Because I want the residents of the 7th Ward to know that their representative can influence their colleagues. Thank you.
Corporation Counsel.
Good evening again. I just wanted to point out to the council that the city code requires that the city council, if you are going to approve this license, makes very specific findings of fact according to the standards. You can always adopt those findings that are in the memo that were prepared by staff. But if this is going to be accepted, the code does require, and I think because there's been such tremendous opposition this evening, it would be in the city's best interest that the council made those findings if they were going to approve this. To provide some, some better protection with our process, as Councilmember Sufferton talks about the process that's in place currently.
Point of information. If that is the case, can someone from staff maybe indicate why that wasn't included in our packet if we have to adopt findings?
So the standards are listed in the memo for your review this evening in the packet. So they were included, they're in italics in terms of the standards for review for your consideration. So those are in the memo.
Can I get clarification from Council Cummings then, what you were saying wasn't?
It's not that it's not included in the packet, but City Code Section 5-9-4, paragraph D, outlines the standards and procedures for license approval. In the sentence just before listing those standards, specifically says the City Council, after receiving said report, which is a report from Planning and Development Committee, may refer the application back to that body for additional review, or by motion may approve with conditions, or disapprove an application for a vacation rental license upon findings of fact with respect to each of the standards set forth below. And it outlines the standards that are in the packet. And so I'm just recommending that whether the council votes this up or down, that to protect the city in terms of the process, that those findings be made according to those standards. And the city council can adopt the findings that are in the packet, in the memo that staff has listed, or based upon what happened at Planning and Development, adopt any sort of findings based upon the committee, what happened in committee.
Okay, Councilmember Burns.
I'm going to hold off for now. I need to.
Okay.
So then should the motion be, I'm sorry, point of information, should the motion be updated then to include those findings? Is that what we're hearing from you?
Yes.
Who was the maker of the motion on this?
I believe it was Councilmember Newsma that moved the
Okay,
item.
and so the findings are on page 236 and 237 of our packet. So should we be reading those into the record?
I don't know. Hopefully I don't need to read into the record, but maybe Councilmember Newsma can amend his.
Can I amend my motion to include including the findings listed in the memo to council? Is that sufficient?
That'll do?
That'll do.
Okay.
They'll be incorporated by reference.
So that's, I guess that's an amended original motion.
Okay. Which,
Whoever
I think
seconded
you-
it has to agree.
And who seconded that?
Councilmember Harris?
Do you agree?
No?
No, I didn't. I wasn't. For which one?
This is for,
Okay, so who
might have been me. It might have been me. I can't
Oh,
remember.
okay,
Might have
okay.
been.
It was one of our voices down.
Mine isn't working, but it wasn't me.
Okay, so Councilmember Newsma makes the motion, and he's amended it himself, and Councilmember Wynn accepted that. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the vacation rental reflecting the findings that are in the packet, and I don't see any more lights on, so I think we're ready for a vote.
Yeah, I will make one comment, quick comment. I just want to quickly say that for me, it's not just, you want to hear from residents, but you still want to hear what the arguments are, right? And so that's where I look to a council member of that ward or community members to say, okay, great, this is a great showing of opposition or support, but then I want to know, like, okay, what are the arguments for or against it? And especially when, in some sense, this is kind of an adopted priority of the city by virtue of the fact that we adopted this. And so I guess I would look to those who served in the previous administration and say, like, why did y'all adopt this in the first place? Is there something that I'm unaware of where now we're saying we want to roll this back? Or I guess my question to staff would be, do we feel like this is out of hand? It doesn't seem like 20 vacation rentals is something that we that should challenge us operationally speaking. So I need something that shows me that we either made a wrong decision by allowing these vacation rentals in Evanston by people who served in the previous administration that adopted this, or to hear from staff that there's still a lot that we need to learn about this, and that somehow it's out of hand, and we need to get it under control. So that's what I'm looking for, and I just haven't heard that. What I've heard from community members is that there's the potential for a lot to go wrong, but that's anything. I can say that for any vacation rental, that yes, there's a potential that people rent out the space that aren't great for our neighborhoods, but that's every single vacation rental, no matter where it is. As far as I understand, most of these are in residential areas because there's hotels in commercial areas and other temporary rental facilities for residents. So it's not uncommon that you would see a vacation rental in a residential area. I travel often, and that's what my family uses. I think almost every time it's in a residential area. So I'm not hearing enough to be concerned about this particular rental, and so I just need more information if I was to not support this.
Councilmember Nguyen, who was on the previous board. Council.
Yes, Councilmember Burns, this came up a lot during the last council because it was sorry, I'm losing my voice, the proliferation of Airbnbs. And we had a lot of discussion about this at the prior council. I think one of the things that did come out of this was the concern about having an on-site, how having someone, the homeowner be on-site was a different animal. And so that actually comes under administrative review, doesn't come to the council. So one of the things that we were very concerned about were, particularly in the areas where we have a lot of student housing, that there were some real estate developers who were looking at buying up property and turning them into Airbnb. There was one in particular who, I think he was from Arizona, if I remember correctly. And that was the kind of remote owner of a large number of Airbnbs that actually the council really did not want to have. And so as a result, we have this coming before us with the standards that are listed here. Here, I think we actually have homeowner representatives, family members, who are living here in Evanston. So that's very different. This family, the homeowner only owned one property, also very different from what we were very worried about during the last council. And as you said, looking to see, has something else happened there? Has the property been mishandled before? Do the neighbors have some more concrete objections to it? So that's how we've ended up with the split. So if you have an Airbnb in your home while you're living there, it's an administrative decision. If you don't, it comes to the council and we apply these standards that are here. And I intend to vote yes for this. I do understand that the neighbors do have a lot of concerns, but I think that given the facts and circumstances that have been presented here tonight, that I don't think that their worries will come to pass.
And the last thing I'll say is again, I'm always open to us changing standards. I think our comp plan is I don't know if it's a good place for this discussion, but other discussions. But again, I like to be able to feel confident that I can apply the same logic in this scenario to another one, and I could not vote no in good faith and know how to do that in another scenario. So I have to unfortunately support this. Unfortunate to the neighbors who are here, but thank you for coming out and objecting to this.
Okay, Councilmember Heracardis.
Councilmember Nguyen answered my question, so.
Oh, good. Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to support this as well. Sorry, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to support this as well. I think we have reasonable people making a reasonable request. The fears expressed by the neighbors are fears of potential adverse outcomes, and the evidence I'm using to justify my vote is the 20-some other properties in town that have not had those fears realized. If, worst case scenario, something negative does come to pass, there is a mechanism in place for the license not to be renewed or even revoked. So I do feel that there is sufficient due process in place here.
Okay, and Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I'll just say, like I said, I generally would, just my process, given that there are unclear guidelines as to follow what the council member of the ward is proposing, and I think that is, I think what this really leads us to, and I might make the referral tonight, maybe I'll have several co-sponsors for it, but if we're not going to, follow, if there isn't a clear process, and we're not going to follow the desires of the council member of the ward, then it's almost like, why do we even have this separate process in the first place? What is the point of having it come to council if we're essentially going to rubber stamp it like staff sans, some, wild case where the property owner was grossly negligent in previous cases, and that could just be built into the regular administrative process, as opposed to having it come here. And so I as we have done with liquor licenses and with others, I think it makes sense to certainly, I see where this is going. I think it makes sense to amend this ordinance, have clearer guidelines, and I'm hoping there's support to have those clear guidelines in the future.
Okay, seeing no more lights, I think we're ready for a vote.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
No.
Councilmember Reed?
No.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
No.
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye. So with a 5-4 vote, the license is approved. All right, now we're ready for a motion to suspend the rules for item P2.
I move suspension of the rules.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Seeing no lights, I think we're ready to vote on suspension of the rules for item P2.
Councilmember Burns?
Can we do an all in favor?
No. What was that?
You do a
All in
voice vote.
favor?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, we are suspending the rules. Whoops. Okay, never mind. Then we're ready to vote on P2. Yeah, no, we've suspended the rules, but we have to vote. What?
Correct.
No,
So have we moved item P2?
yeah. Have we? I hope.
Yeah, I think I.
You moved
we have
suspension of the rules.
Oh.
We suspended the rules. Okay, yeah, we need
That's
to.
what
Mayor
my
Pro Tem,
light was
I
on.
will move item P2, approval of ordinances 96-022, 97-022, and 98-022.
Second.
Okay, now it has been properly moved and seconded, so I think we're ready for a vote.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris? Aye. Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye. So on a 9-0 vote, item P2 passes. And now we're ready for item H1, and we have an amendment, and I sent it to everybody in an email earlier this evening. It's a paragraph long that basically provides for enforcement by our corporation counsel.
I'll move item H1, incorporating the section that Councilmember Ravel sent earlier.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, this was a referral by my colleague in the First Ward. Really happy to support this. The Human Services Committee unanimously supported that, and I expect that will be the case here. I've had, personal experience with residents and folks that I know that have been denied housing because of, criminal, getting denied because of a criminal background. In fact, in one case, this was right before the county ordinance took effect, in one case, a resident who had been out of prison for years and years. I forget, it was quite a while that they had been out of jail, was denied a rental unit because of a criminal background for something they served their time for, had been out, had no interactions with law enforcement since, yet still were denied because of that. And so I really am excited that this is moving forward. I just have one question, just to, make sure that we're clear on this for this and others. So and I don't know if Councilmember Kelly or if our Corporation Counsel can answer this, but did anything in our previous code conflict with the county ordinance? Or it just didn't incorporate the language?
It didn't incorporate it, which would mean that in terms of enforcement on these additions, these amendments, it would have to be done
at the county.
Correct.
So it was still, just to, be clear for everyone out there, if you had a case before today, this was still the law of the land here in Evanston. The county had an ordinance that made this,
correct,
that was in effect here in Evanston. What we are doing is updating our code to reflect the county code, which is something I'm quite familiar with, making amendments to update our code to reflect higher and lower bodies. But even in the absence of this being in our code, previously, it was in effect in the through the county code, and I think it is wonderful that we're incorporating it. One, so we have the ability for local enforcement and local adjudication, which does give us another tool similar to some of the criminal justice reform work that this body has done in the past by allowing us for local adjudicative power. So I'm in full support of this, and I'm thank you, Councilmember Kelly, and all the folks that were a part of helping to draft this. I think I'll let you speak for yourself and the groups that were a part of getting this drafted outside of the law department, who, of course, did their own work.
And
Thank you.
Corporation Counsel had some comments.
I just had a question to clarify what's actually been moved, because the item that passed out of Human Services was unamended, and so the council needs to actually vote on the amendment and then vote on the item as amended.
Okay.
So
I think my motion was an all-encompassing motion that included what was passed out of Human Services and included the amendment, so we didn't have to vote several times on all that stuff. It was one motion that had everything in one.
I certainly understand. I think just to be, so that our record is clear and we are making sure that we are following proper protocol, we can do a voice vote on the amendment and then the roll call vote on the
Okay.
item.
So everyone has a copy of the amendment, and would someone make a motion specific to the
I'll
amendment?
move the amendment.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, and all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, the amendment is approved, and now
We can do a voice vote on the whole
do a
shebang, too.
voice vote on the,
Ordinances have to, according to city council rules, unfortunately, have to be a voice vote.
A roll call, you mean?
Yeah, roll, I'm sorry, yeah, roll call, yeah. So not a voice vote, a roll
Not a
call
voice vote,
on
okay.
ordinances.
okay.
specifically.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Sufferton. Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris. Aye. Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye. And on a 9-0 vote, that amendment to our fair housing ordinance passes. Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Oops, Councilmember Kelly. Okay, moving on to rules. Could someone make a motion for R1?
I'll just move them both at the same time, item R1 and R2.
And a second? Can we do that?
Second.
Okay.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I'm going to move to hold these items. Councilmember Burns has a referral in that will be coming up on the next Rules Committee, which is October 3rd. And I think it makes sense to consider that amendment before adopting these new rules.
Okay. Councilmember Reed moves to hold this, so to our next meeting. And is there a second to that?
Yeah, I'll second the hold.
And I think that kind of stops our discussion.
Correct.
So the item is held until our next meeting, next council meeting. All right. Well, then I think we're ready for call of the wards, starting with Councilmember Burns.
Asking if we could come back to him.
Oh, sure. Okay. Councilmember Suffredin? Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, the regular 8th Ward monthly meeting is next Thursday at 6 o'clock. So inviting all of the residents out in the audience who are watching at 10 o'clock at night to come to that ward meeting and participate in it. We will be talking about the, we're not going to have an official budget presentation, but we'll be kind of preliminarily talking about the budget as this body is moving into budget season. Looking forward to those discussions.
Okay. And now we'll go back to Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, so first up, Fifth Ward meeting this Thursday, 7 p.m., virtual meeting. We'll have a Fifth Ward announcements as per usual, and also a Q&A and open forum, but we'll also have Edgar Cano, Public Works Director, and Kevin Johnson, who's the sanitation supervisor for the city, there to discuss sanitation concerns and efforts across the Fifth Ward. We'll also have our interim chief of police, Richard Eddington, there to talk about the existing ordinance, not to be confused with some of the proposals that we've taken a look at. I think that's on the Human Services Committee, but the existing noise ordinance and what it says about the acceptable amount of noise for a backyard event. So that will be, again, Thursday. Why is this not working? There we go. Also on October 1st, we're hosting the Secretary of State's mobile DMV service at Fleetwood Jourdain Center, 1655 Foster Avenue, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. This is an event that is open to anyone and everyone. Services available are driver's license cards, renewal and correction, state ID cards, free state ID for age 65 and plus, license plate renewal stickers, plus more. And feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any additional questions at bburns@cityofevanston.org. Also on October 12th at 5:30 p.m. at Double Clutch Brewery, we're going to have our second parking meeting with our parking division manager, Lucas Tatara, continuing the conversation about identifying new strategies and opportunities to improve neighborhood parking for residents and businesses in the Hill Arts District. Again, this is October 12th, 5:30 p.m. at Double Clutch. And that is all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Quick
you.
note, speaking of the noise ordinance, the shofars that are being blown around town love it. I've wondered if those are a violation of the noise ordinance. It's a horn that is part of it.
Councilmember Heracardis.
So it's Latin Heritage Month is still ongoing, and Evanston Pride is having an event at Fountain Square on Thursday the 29th from 5 to 8 p.m. Hope to see everyone there.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
No report.
Councilmember Harris.
I have been, hello, it works sometimes on this side. I have to talk on this side of it. I have been meeting with city staff to understand the needs on both sides, and we will be working towards an October ward meeting. I encourage everybody to come out October 2nd, Sunday. The fire department is hosting an event, and it sounds like it's going to be fun and informational.
Yes, and Councilmember Wynn?
No report.
Councilmember Nusma.
3 brief items. Number 1, Shana Tova to anybody who has just celebrated Rosh Hashanah. Number 2, congratulations to Shanita Stewart on her appointment as our next police chief, with a huge thanks to everyone who was a part of that process, including City Manager Stowe, council members who were part of that process, EPD staff, including Chief Eddington, and the community members who were part of that process. I am very pleased with the results, and I look forward to welcoming Chief Stewart aboard on October 10th, a milestone for the city for sure. And looking ahead to October, office hours and ward meeting per the normal schedule, look it up on the website. Thanks.
Okay, and I have no report. So now I'm going to recognize Councilmember Nusma for a motion.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding litigation. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act as set forth in 5 ILCS 120/2A, Section C11.
And I guess we do a roll call for that.
Councilmember Burns? Councilmember Burns? Executive session.
What is this, an aye?
Yes, executive session. Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen? Councilmember Nguyen?
Yes.
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye. So on a 9-0 vote, we are adjourning to executive session.
8-0 vote.